Ever since man has looked up into the stars, he has seen strange objects in the skies. But the search for proof of extraterrestrial intelligence has produced disappointing results. The best so-called evidence has only been a few photographs and film clips. But now, all that's about to change. Since 1985, more than 15 million Americans have reportedly witnessed unidentified flying objects. But despite the seemingly overwhelming evidence, mainstream science has chosen to ignore the subject. But now, for the first time in history, one of the greatest mysteries of this century is unraveling. A former government scientist has come forward to discuss the military's classified work on extraterrestrial spacecraft. Human advances in technology have exploded in a million directions and show no signs of slowing down. The ever-increasing pace of achievement in the last several decades is unparalleled in human history. The high cost of developing and producing these technologies has limited the number of contenders from the private sector, leaving the government and large corporate businesses on the cutting edge of new discoveries. Always in the public eye, big business competes for high-paying contracts, working night and day to invent or further develop the next big thing to satisfy the masses. The government, on the other hand, must conceal information concerning national security that for obvious reasons should not be public knowledge. But when it comes to matters concerning the welfare of our planet, the living beings on it, or potential clues to the mysteries of the universe, many believe it should be our right to know. The end of World War II and the invention of the atomic bomb signaled a new era of international mistrust. Since the earliest days of the Cold War, which coincides with the Roswell incident and the start of the modern UFO era, the military has been especially secretive about its advances and achievements, while always searching for the perfect weapon or super sophisticated tool of espionage. High-tech surveillance equipment around the world, and even in space, has allowed global intelligence to see and be aware of many things that the common civilian cannot even begin to imagine. The military recruits many talented civilians when special expertise is required. And propulsion systems expert Bob Lazar claims he was one of them. In this exclusive interview, he gives his detailed account of his employment with the Department of Naval Intelligence at the top-secret facility known as S4, where, according to Bob, he was hired to work on recovered alien spacecraft. S4 is located 125 miles north of Las Vegas and 15 miles south of Groom Lake. This now not-so-secret military base at Groom Lake, Nevada, is known as Area 51, or Dreamland, as insiders like to call it. Born in 1959 in Coral Gables, Florida, Bob has lived much of his life in Las Vegas, Nevada. With degrees in physics and electronics from MIT and Caltech, he has dabbled in everything from chemistry to fireworks in an effort to understand the finer points of propulsion. He has even assembled a jet car with a 22,000 horsepower engine salvaged from a Navy F-3D Sky Knight that is capable of land speeds of over 350 miles per hour. Fate took a serious turn for Bob in 1982. Arriving early for a lecture at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico given by Dr. Edward Teller, one of the inventors of the atomic bomb, Bob was able to meet and talk to the famous physicist. Coincidentally, Dr. Teller was reading the local paper, The Monitor, with a featured front-page article on Bob, and the two struck up a conversation. Later, Bob sent Dr. Teller his resume for consideration, and soon after, Bob was hired by the Los Alamos National Laboratory. This Los Alamos-based directory lists Bob as an employee. By 1989, Bob was brought into the top-secret program at S4 known as Project Galileo. In the following interview, Bob reveals many details of this amazing experience. Did you witness any disk technology at Area 51?
No, there was absolutely no ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there. People at Area 51 do not have the clearance.
How long were you employed at S4 And when were you hired?
When was I hired at S4? I guess early '89, and I was probably there only about 6 months or so, on a very infrequent basis.
How were you transported to and from work?
At the time that I was working there at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas, there was a Special Projects EG&G building. When I was told to go to work, I drove there, parked my car there, and got in a plane at the airport, flew to Groom Lake, where I deplaned and waited for a bus, and the bus drove me down to S4. The S4 facility is an area just off the Papoose lake bed, dry lake bed, and it consists of 9 hangars. The hangars have sloped doors on them with a sand texture coating. Around the opposite end of the hangars, there's the standard entrance where you're dropped off at, go through a security check, and inside there's a small complex. There is some office space, there's several laboratories, the hangars themselves, of course, and a few other places. I didn't have free rein to go wherever I wanted to. Everywhere I went to, I was essentially escorted, so that was really all about that I saw.
Inside the facility, what was the basic layout? Were there underground levels?
I don't think there were any underground levels to it, though there could have been. I don't think it was an extensive underground facility. It just looked like an installation that was butt up against a mountain. And I didn't see any evidence of any stairs going down, elevators, or but like I said, I don't know. There could have been, and I just might not have been permitted in those areas. It's difficult to really surmise how long it had been operational. Everything did look fairly new. By that I mean I don't think this installation was there in the early 70s. Nothing was worn. Things looked fairly freshly painted. So, as a ballpark guess, I would say it would really surprise me if the installation was older than 5, 7, 10 years, something like that.
What agency is in charge of S4? Who controls the program?
I was paid by the Department of Naval Intelligence, and what they're doing researching extraterrestrial craft is beyond me, but that's where my checks came from, so I can only assume that they were in charge of that.
Did you see high-level government or military personnel at S4?
No, not at S4.
Anywhere in the overall facility at all?
At Area 51, I believe I saw some military personnel, but no one I can identify or rank or.
Is this research confined to the U.S. government, or did you see any international involvement?
At one time, the Russians were involved, and supposedly there was some breakthrough made by our team. However, this project was split up. And right after that happened, the Russians were no longer permitted on the facility at all. And, that's all I know about it. What was discovered, why they were kicked out, when they started working with us, is all unknown to me.
You were hired to replace a scientist killed in the project. What exactly happened there?
Allegedly, obviously, I didn't see this, and I don't know it to be fact, but this is what I was told, that I was hired to replace one of a couple people that were killed while working on one of the reactors from one of the crafts. Apparently, they, for whatever reason, cut open an operating reactor, and the device exploded, killing both of them. The scientists that were killed there, allegedly the detonation from the explosion was fairly large. It would have rivaled a small tactical nuke. So it was done at the Nevada test site, and it was to be passed off as an unannounced nuclear test.
Did you have any direct contact or communication with aliens?
No, not at all.
Tell us about the briefing files. Under what conditions did you gain access to them?
I was put into the briefing room with 121 or 22 briefings and really was just told to sit and read through them. I think they were there just to mainly educate me on what was going on. They weren't a complete in-depth explanation on everything else, but just essentially a brief synopsis on some of the other projects that were going on there. Supposedly, the information, now this isn't something that I determined, it's something I was told, that the crafts originated from a planet that orbited the Zeta Reticuli star system. Zeta Reticuli 1 and Zeta Reticuli 2 are two stars of a binary star system. The craft allegedly came from there. One or two autopsy photographs I saw dealt with just a small photograph, a bust shot essentially, just head, shoulders, and chest of an alien with a chest was cut open in T fashion and one single organ was removed. The organ itself in the other picture was cut and vivisectioned essentially, showing the different chambers in there. This was totally unrelated to anything I was doing, but from that photograph it looked like what you see in UFO lore as the typical gray. So how tall it was from what I could see, I couldn't tell because I only saw a portion of the photograph, but if everything else you see is correct, I would imagine it was 3.5 or 4 feet tall. But there again, all I had to see was a photograph, and I didn't have much to go on.
You mentioned these beings have historically interacted with man. How? What was involved there?
Allegedly, this interaction has occurred since, man was a simian creature, and, there were genetic alterations made.
How specifically did the briefings detail how the aliens manipulated our genetics over the centuries?
It mentioned 65 or 63 corrections or additions to the genetic makeup that finally resulted in a human creature.
In an earlier interview, you had mentioned you saw what you thought may be an alien. Was it an alien? What did you see?
What I had said and all that occurred was I was walking by a door that had a small 9x9 window in it, little wires running through it, and glanced in there, and there were two either technicians, scientists, or whoever they were, looking down at something. And what that something was caught my eye, and I never really did see what it was. A lot of people have asserted, well, there was an alien, and there are aliens working around there, and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't think that was the case. But who knows? I was, you're seeing all these fantastic things, and your mind gets going, and, you catch something out of the corner of your eye. Who knows what your mind's going to come up with? So I certainly wouldn't stand on that as fact by any means.
What was the